sponsor. Welcome everyone. I'm so glad to welcome you to the free class of Web Efficient Present. And this class is here because of the Newburgh Free Library, making it free for our patrons and guests. So let's just start begin with Shanna White, Open Hub's mentor. Shanna, the
Okay,
stage is yours.
I do still want to hear from Donald, but we'll do that at the beginning of the Q&A. Is that all right? Okay. I'm Shauna White. I'm a freelance website developer. I'm self-taught, and really, website development has been a creative medium where I could find my ability to imagine something and make it happen in a fairly quick time period, which is what made it fun for me, and then also bring all my problem solving mental skills to bear. So this is why this became my playground. And but in addition to that, I'm also an entrepreneur, and this has led me down the path of exploring marketing. And so now I'm understanding it's not just about having a website, it's also about maybe you want landing pages to give something free away so that you can collect email addresses and grow your list. Maybe you want to have a quiz because, Louise, that could be a very way of cheapening your conversions, getting highly qualified leads. So then the place where like all this one technical place where all this comes together, and I find in my circles of solo entrepreneurs, this is one of the hang-ups, is DNS, like deploying your custom domain name. How does that work technically? It gets a little bit like, what's going on here? And it can be really frustrating for solopreneurs. So I got really excited about teaching this class just to save entrepreneurs time by clearing some of these things up. So I have some topics prepared for you that I'm going to go through, and then we'll have an open Q&A at the end. If anybody has any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. Even if you have questions that you knew there was going to be an open Q&A and you're like, I want to ask about Facebook pixels or whatever, you can just put that in the chat so that that's in a question queue. And but on the topics, we'll be interactive. But anyway, I will just share my screen and start. And I don't even know if I have the right window open. Hang on. Okay, and then I can do present mode, right? Okay, so deploying your custom domain. This is class number 3 out of 6 for the Newburgh Free Library series, creating an efficient and effective web presence. Okay, so what the heck is DNS anyway? And I'm going to ask Julia, can you monitor the chat if there's anything I need to see? Because when I'm sharing my screen.
Absolutely, no worries.
Thank you. So basically, DNS is a system that connects human language with computer language. So as humans, we understand words like openhubproject.com, newburghlibrary.org, or newyorktimes.com. But the computer is looking for a number address to actually know where to request those website files from. So in order for our browser to actually get the website files, when we put in openhubproject.com, the computer needs to ask the DNS, the domain name lookup system, for what's the IP number for that domain name, so that it can then request the website files. And so that's actually how it works. When you put in a website address in your browser, the first thing it does is it goes to the DNS system, gets the IP address, and then once it has the IP address, then it uses the IP address to request the files from the web server. I want to show you something else first. So let me bring in my... You can see my command prompt, right?
Yes.
Okay. So there's this, I don't know how to make the command prompt larger, so I hope the type is not too small, but there's this, and I don't know a lot in command prompt, so don't think I'm super techie or anything like that. But there's this little command called ping, and ping lets you test the connection to a website. So I'm going to put in, for instance, openhubproject.com. So I'm ping space openhubproject.com. And what comes back is openhubproject.com. And then in square brackets, there's this number, 68.66.208.1. That's the IP address. So any website that we put up there is going to have a number, that IP address number that the computer system is looking for in order to actually connect with that website. Okay, let's go back to present. So when you register a custom domain name, some people have had the experience of registering a custom domain name in a very conscious way, where all you did that day was register your domain name, or all you did in that moment. And then other people have had the experience where they bought hosting and they got the domain name for free. So there's varying degrees of awareness about what this is. I keep all my domain names registered with a separate registrar, and then my hosting is done with a different service. So basically, when you register a domain name, you are licensing the exclusive right to use the human readable phrase that you've chosen, which is attached to a TLD. So TLD stands for top level domain, and that just means .com, .net, .org, .io. There's a bunch of them that are coming out, .online. But once you've registered the custom domain name, that does not mean that your domain name is connected to where your website files are.
So let's address really quick.
Yes.
You see, the domain name is the kind of human language vocabulary representation of IP address. So this is a database putting together those and saying, if you see this name, go by this IP. Make sense? This is domain name stands for, and that's registrars as a business who are registering your domain name as an intellectual property or as a brand asset. Hosting is another business which is providing you the space where you store your content for your website. And it's worth, oh, thank you, Sashana. Thank you, you have it addressed. Okay. It's worth to separate those two.
Yes. So registering a domain name and connecting the domain name to the IP are two different tasks. When you register, you are reserving the right to use your domain name for whatever you want, but the next step is to connect it to what you want to use it for, to assign the IP address, so to speak, or connect the IP address to that domain name, so that then when a client computer, so a user goes to look for it, their computer, their browser, and the DNS system knows how to help you find it. And by the way, when you make a change to your IP address, like you have to change hosts or you have to change a setting in the DNS, it can take 24 to 48 hours to be reflected. And the reason why is because the DNS system is getting updated, because the system caches a database of these indexes so that it can be faster. So it takes a while for those caches to get updated. So if you're ever wondering like, I changed the setting and I don't see a change, that's why. Okay, so registration versus hosting. Basically, the domain registration is, like Yulia was saying, it's an index. It says this is the name, and here is the IP address that it connects to. Whereas hosting is more like a filing cabinet that holds your website files. So I know people on here have used WordPress. WordPress is a kind of a web page builder. It's a better word for it is content management system. But basically, it's the environment that you're working in to build the visual and information experience that you want users to have. That reduces to files. They're actually text files and image files. And those files have to live somewhere, and that's what your hosting is the place where you put your files. So DNS is really about, or your experience of managing, your task of managing DNS for yourself is really about managing the connection between the registration index for your domain and the connection of that to the location where you have your website files. Pretty much, so the place where those instructions are contained is called the DNS record or the DNS zone. Probably the more technical term is DNS zone, and then each instruction in the DNS zone is called a record. So when it comes to your deploying your custom domain name, there's pretty much two kinds of records that you're going to be dealing with. Those are A records and C name records. And it's so simple. I didn't think it was simple for a long time. I was like, what's going on here? I don't understand. But it's actually pretty simple. If what you have is an IP address, that goes in an A record. If what you have is a human readable domain, that goes in a CNAME record. So, does anybody have any questions at this point? Okay, looks good.
Ask, do you have any recommendations on connecting to a CDN or anything like that?
I don't. Do you?
No, I mean, like, there's Cloudflare, there's, certain services out there that you can actually use to kind of spread your content to servers throughout the world, so to speak.
Yeah.
I highly recommend it if you're going to be trying to get your content to people as fast as possible.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that what you're talking about.
CDN is content delivery network, and you need to have your content closer to your end users in case if you are YouTube or if you have heavy content needing to be resolved very fast. For example, Google search. Make sense? To have your content closer and faster deliver, region by region.
Yeah, so it takes time for the DNS lookup to occur and the website file transfer to occur. So the closer your computer is to the website, or the closer your website is to your users, the faster your load time is going to be. That's why some website service providers will say, do you want to be on our Michigan server or on our Florida server or on our Europe server or whatever. So you would choose the web server location that's closest to your target audience. But the other thing that a service like Cloudflare does, if you have a high traffic website and you actually might sustain an attack, I think it's a DDoS attack, where there's just so much, someone is sending a tremendous amount of traffic to your website in order to crash it, in order to take so many resources as to crash it. Cloudflare and probably other CDNs will help protect from that, because they will distribute the traffic to other locations so that the resources don't crash. Okay.
For small businesses, it might be not applicable. CDN as a topic is not so crucial for small businesses. But if you're, let's say, big brand, global brand like Nike, you probably would be interested to have not only your web server in the country, serving China, Latin America, Brazil, Russia, I don't know, Canada, and as such. But also you would be interested in the local domain names in those countries' specific domain zones. Make sense?
I am just pausing my screen for a second because I'm going to log into my. Oh, let's see. I guess I'll log into Moniker. I don't want to record my password, that's why.
Yeah, so it's worth to keep separate domain name provider and hosting provider. Quite often you can find yourself in your data into the sellable assets, or your personal data is sold. For example, GoDaddy is known by that very well. As soon as you buy a domain name with GoDaddy or hosting with GoDaddy, you're usually buying both hosting and domain name, and immediately your data is getting exposed. You got spammed. So you have to pay extra to hide your personal information.
Yeah, actually, that's an interesting thing. So, what you have is when you register for a domain name, your contact information goes into a database, and that database is publicly available. But you can buy what's called domain privacy, and I found out that I got spoiled because I started with this company that started in Florida called Moniker. It was 3 guys in Florida, and it grew and grew and grew, and then it got purchased by a company in Germany. So now it's kind of huge, and I just stayed with them. They have the cheapest domain prices. They're like $8.99, $9.99, $10.99, and they actually don't charge for privacy. Whereas I happen to know the prices for GoDaddy. They would charge $14.99 for a .com, and they'll charge $14.99 per year for privacy. So it's not like it costs that much because it's only an annual charge. But why pay money when you could get it for free?
Yeah, there are multi-factors to consider. That's what we're trying to address here.
Yes, and the other thing that's interesting is that since Moniker moved to Europe, and Europe is now under GDPR, you don't even need WHOIS privacy because the GDPR prevents people's information from being shared in the web registration database if they're registered in a European company.
Do you need to address to explain what abbreviation GDPR is?
I actually don't know what it stands for. The GDPR is it's a privacy standard in Europe, and it's also being adopted in California. So so what that means is that if your website tracks people, they need
Track cookies.
Yeah, there's stricter rules for what privacy data you are allowed to collect without their permission. You have to ask their permission, basically. So if you're like, hey, I only serve people in the US, that's great, but if they are in California, you got to make sure that you're GDPR compliant. Okay, let's look at this. I'm opening the Zone editor for a website that I manage called Sacred Reality, and I just want to show you what an A record looks like versus what a CNAME record looks like. So this is an A record. We've got sacredreality.org, and then it says the type right here, and here's an IP address. And TTL means time to live, and I think it's in seconds. Is that right? Yes. So that's 14,400 seconds. I don't know what that translates to. And then here we have a CNAME record, and this was automatically set up when I set up my account with A2 Hosting. So, and that's why when you buy hosting, and you get a domain name, you might have a bunch of stuff set up for you and you've never had to manage any of this manually. But anyway, so mail.sacredreality.org is a CNAME record. Then you can see that the CNAME record points to sacredreality.org, the human readable name. And I have some other things here. Other examples. I am using Entreport as my mail client, my ESP for marketing mail. So they said set up a record, set up a CNAME record, and here is what the, I think that's called the host value, smtp.sacredreality.org. I'm not sure if that's what that's called. And then the name of the record. That's the name of the record. The type of the record is CNAME, and then the value is returnpath.entreport.mail.com. Now this is another Entreport record right here, but this is an A record, and it was given an IP address. So I just followed their instructions, but I'm showing you this to reinforce with an example, the demonstration of the difference between an A record and a CNAME record. So that's that. Okay. What do we have next? Okay, so brand consistency. Anyone who is involved in marketing as a solopreneur probably has had some thoughts about how can you want to be able to present your brand in a recognizable fashion. So multiple names like sacredreality.org and then healedrelationship.com. How are people going to recognize that those two domains are the same entity if I'm trying to use them as part of the same entity? So it's really much better if we can use our one domain name for our brand and use that domain name in different forms for all the different things that we need to do. So maybe we have a website. I actually like A2 hosting, but I thought that people would recognize GoDaddy, so that's why I put it here. So maybe you have a website on GoDaddy, and then you also want to have some landing pages on MailChimp, because that's an easy way to get people's email address right into your email system if you're using MailChimp. And then maybe you've got a quiz on bucket.io like I do, and you want that to be part of your brand name too. So how can you have this all as part of one website when they're all different devices? Actually, what I forgot to mention is that an IP address, right? We match a domain name to an IP address. An IP address is given, a unique IP address is given to every different device on the internet. So when we talk about GoDaddy, we could call that a device. I mean, it's more complicated than a device, but it's a server that is a device that has an IP address. MailChimp is another server. It's going to have a different IP address. And bucket.io is yet another server, another device. It needs another IP address. So we have to map somehow our custom domain name to multiple IP addresses. So that's the question. How do we accomplish this? And the answer is with subdomains. So a subdomain is where you have a string of characters or a word, preferably a word that humans will recognize, before your domain, like quiz.sacredreality.org. www is a subdomain. That's a subdomain that's automatically assigned with every website. So you can use your DNS record to connect different IP addresses to different subdomains. And that's, let's see, okay, let's look at how is, okay. Let's look at how is by looking at my DNS record. So that's a bit of what we already started to look at is, okay, that's why I wanted to show you Moniker. Okay, so first of all, I have a lot of domain names here, but we'll go to, where is, Maybe I do a search. I think it's this one. Okay, so I used healedrelationship.com to point to a quiz. So bucket.io is the quiz software that I use. So I just put a CNAME record right here where my registration is, my domain registration. I also have a Facebook verification record on this domain. So I'm managing my DNS zone. See right here it says export DNS zone. I'm managing that right at my registrar. This has nothing to do with my hosting. But
Think about it as a pointing to specific location. I mean, this human eye readable name shall go to this specific IP address, period. That's the only role the registrars is performing with your domain name registration. But it's huge.
so with sacredreality.org, we can see I'm using that domain heavily, but I don't have any domain name record here on my registrar. What I have is I have put in a name server setting. So that name server points to this is actually A2 hosting. I'm a reseller for A2 hosting. So it points to my hosting account. So therefore, to manage my DNS zone for Sacred Reality, I will go to my cPanel on my hosting account. So the first part is to locate where is your DNS zone, where do you manage it? If you've used a name server at your registrar, then your DNS zone is going to be managed wherever your registrar is pointing to, wherever that name server is pointing to. So now on my on my hosting account, this is where I'm managing my DNS. And every time I need to add another service, in other words, another device, all of these records at the top were created when I created my account. So this is just for my A2 hosting account to manage my Sacred Reality website and making sure that when people put Sacred Reality into their web browser, they get this website, which is actually the website files are hosted on this server. But I also wanted to have a quiz. And this quiz is on bucket.io. So how could I do that? I had to point it someplace else. I had to create a subdomain. Looking for it, and here it is. quiz.sacredreality.org. And that's a CNAME record because that's what Bucket told me to make. They said, create a CNAME record and point that CNAME record to domains.bucket.io. And then in my Bucket account, in my dashboard, I added quiz.sacredreality.org. So Bucket knows that when they get a request for sacredreality.org, they know where to send it on their system.
I believe if you would be using HubSpot as a third-party provider, you would need to point your domain name to HubSpot as well. Here, instead of Bucket.io, you would need to point it to HubSpot.
Would you use a CNAME or an A record?
Yep, you would for something like that, you would use a CNAME. All these things. So you'd use CNAMEs to point all your records towards HubSpot. You'd use an MX record and a TXT record for email that you want to associate with that. That will allow you to send emails with an @HubSpot domain.
So you see, it's kind of the next level of abstraction. You think it's one space, but it's many space. You just point into. If this, you go here. If that, you go there.
So I have one more point to share, but I wanted to see how are people feeling about this. Does anybody have any questions?
So confused about everything. That everything's a question.
What did you say?
I'm just so confused about everything that I have questions about everything. But it's okay. I'll just review it later.
Okay. Anybody else?
So the main goal for today, I mean, thinking about domain name to make it associated with IP address, with the physical machine somewhere where your own hosting or data or information website stored. When people will be searching for your name in Google or just putting this into URL, this would be redirect you to specific physical machine. Make sense? James. Two databases, names, IP addresses. CNAME, a record, different scenarios, but those just has to be interconnected.
Okay.
Make sense?
Thank you. Yes.
I said this in the chat. I like to think of IP addresses like GPS locations. You know, you can get like coordinates for something,
Right.
and those coordinates are just numbers, right? You know, they're just numbers that will actually locate something on a physical address. And at that physical address is where you can store data. You can, you know, make transactions with data. It could be anything at that point, but you're just mapping. You're just making a map.
Good analogy. Thank you, Dennis.
Okay, so one more thing, and then we'll do open Q&A. We talk about other things if you've got questions about other things too.
But as soon as you build website, you're mostly more realistically using cPanel. Can you raise your hands who are dealing with cPanels? Do you know what cPanels are?
I would also say that, like, once you get, this is like a small hurdle that you'll have to face. Like, it's like a one and done type of situation. Most providers, like, you know, your forms or whatever you might be using, are going to give you some very clear instructions on how to do it. You're basically going to be doing a lot of copying and pasting. And if it's a really good system, there's going to be an automated, like, you just press a button and they take care of it for you type situation. So don't let this scare you at all. Like, you got this. You can do it.
Yep. There is a question there from Luis. I think it's not question but statement.
Yes, I did. So that's because www is sort of automatically included. And so the instructions told me to make not just the subdomain, but also the, like, if I may, double subdomain of www.quiz.sacredrally.org. Yeah, and then I made some landing pages on, what do you call it, Entreport. So this is the IP address for Entreport. And they allow me, in addition to being an email service provider, they also do landing pages. I guess that's not such a big deal. MailChimp does the same thing, but I really like their landing page builder. And so I made some other subdomains that I could use with my Entreport. So let's talk about one more thing here, and then I'll show you my Entreport stuff too. Okay, so say that you don't have to read all this text, wall of text. It should just be an image and I do all the talking, but it's not the way I think when I'm putting my slides together. Okay, so say you were offered the opportunity to write a book chapter, and in your book chapter you could put a link to a free gift, and that free gift would be a lead generation tool. So people give their email address if they're interested in your free gift. But a book is like a paperback book. That's going to be around for a long time. So what happens if you have to make a change in the URL for your free gift? And then it gets broken. That's a bad thing. Then all the work you did to make that book chapter gets wasted. So the way that you can protect that is by setting up a redirect from the very beginning. And what that means is that you choose a URL that you're happy with, and you set that URL up to point to your free resource. And then you put your URL in the book. The URL is permanent, but because it's redirecting to the URL for your resource, if you have to change the URL for your resource, you can change it. And so you can maintain that link in that book forever, even if you have to make changes to the free gift that you're offering. And tools to do that are your htaccess file. I'll show you that. And also, if you have a content management system like WordPress or Drupal that has a plugin that allows you to manage redirects, you can do it in there. So this happened to me. I have a book chapter, and I'll just show you my stuff, and then we can open it up for Q&A. So this is my book chapter. This is the end of my book chapter, and I have these are my chosen URLs that are pretty easy for people to look at, read, and type, because we're going from paper to digital. They're not going to be copy pasting or clicking a link. They actually have to type it out. So I wanted to pick something really simple, and then in my htaccess file, which is a file that just sits right in the top directory of your website. This is, you may or may not be into writing this. You might just want to use a plugin that does it for you with a form. But basically, this is sacredreality.org/heart alignment, and I'm saying redirect to this page. And I can change this redirect if I need to. The second one is the link to my quiz in Bucket, and I just put the preview of my Bucket quiz because I'm not ready to publish the quiz. When I'm ready to publish the quiz, I'll update my link because the book's not published yet. So here, if we go to the first one, access.sacredreality/heart alignment. Oh, I'm sorry. I meant to go to... This is not what I wanted to do. I wanted to go to this one and show you how the redirect works. Here we go. We're going to go to this one. Okay, so I'm putting in sacredreality.org/heart alignment, and then that redirected to access.sacredreality.org. So this is still on brand in terms of the sacredreality.org domain, but if we look at the pinging, we come up with one address, and then let me get sacredreality.org here. Oops. So that's a different IP address. So when we ping access.sacredreality.org, we get 209.170.211.179 device location in the internet. When we ping sacredreality.org, we get 209.124.76.14 location on the internet. So it looks to the human eye like it's all one thing, but to the computer is being sent to get the resource from wherever the resource is in the world. So We are opening it up now for questions. Questions about these topics, questions about anything. And I would love to hear from Donald, actually. Can we do that?
What do you want to know?
I'd love to know where you're calling in from,
Connecticut?
Connecticut, and how did you find us, and what are you
Um,
that makes you
You're on Meetup today.
okay? And what are you up to that makes you interested in this joining a class?
Well, actually, I kind of misunderstood the heading of the description of what it was. But I learned, every time I come to a Meetup meeting, I learn something new. So it's been fun and it's been very pleasurable. And it brought back a horrible memory I had where I had taken a company I was working for and I moved their domain from this provider to that provider. And I had forgotten to change I changed the DNS, the name servers. And what happens when you do that is you lose all the MX records and the C names and the A records from what it used to be on the old system. And if you didn't write them down, you're out of luck. Luckily, I had written it down somewhere and I finally figured out what was going, but that was the first time I tried that. And I said, oh, that's how you do that. So, I mean, what you're telling people is like very good to know, but under simple circumstances, you usually, when you change from GoDaddy to Bluehost or somewhere else, usually you just have to change the name servers on the domain, and then the new system will automatically put in the plumbing for all the MX records and the C names and all that, so that you really don't have to deal with that on a day-to-day basis, unless you really want to get involved in that stuff. So
Yes, if you just have one website, then it's a pretty it's a pretty simple thing, like you're saying, just pointing the name servers to the right location. But if you have multiple online assets that are part of your brand presence, then it's handy to. I found that it's been very time saving for me to know these things when the other solopreneurs in my group, my quiz learning group, they were getting hung up on it for hours. And so I feel like, man, let's just do a class where we can like lay it out for people so they don't have to spend hours doing this.
Nice.
Okay. So
Do we
there's
need to address the difference between website versus landing page? Was it clear? Was it addressed? Do we need to discuss it a little bit longer?
well, there's interest. There's definitely interest in discussing landing pages versus websites, but I would like to know what about that people would like to discuss. We've got two people who said they're interested.
Well, I actually had a kind of a DNS question before we get into landing pages versus home pages and things like that. My
Sure.
DNS question is do you help customers actually choose a DNS name, a domain name? Do you get into that science at all?
I'm not usually. Yes, I have. I have. I have. For instance, I had a website customer. His business is, gosh, no, I can't remember his last name. Braga Woodworks, and he was using the domain name BB Woodworks,
Right?
and I was like, no one's gonna know who you are. Why don't you just let's switch it to Braga Woodworks?
Yeah, see, and that's part of the psychology. Do
Exactly.
you go any further into it? I mean, I've seen some presentations on, you might as well, get like two psychologists and whatnot, and they sit and analyze this thing to no end. as to what the proper name should be to, you know, entice the most people to the website. Do you ever get to that kind of level?
I understand that it's an SEO consideration, that you want to find the best keywords for
Exactly.
your niche, and then but it's a combination of what's your strategy plus what's available. So,
KPIs. Let's talk KPIs, business objectives. First of
yeah.
all,
Dennis, you
that's
can
where
jump.
you started. Yeah, Dennis definitely has to add to that.
I would like to. So when I'm thinking about domains, first of all, like, you know, find, as Shanna just said, like, you know, find the ones most appropriate for you. But if available, buy other domains and redirect the heck out of them to your site. So you can go to any one of these places and you're going to go back to your main domain. Do keyword analysis. It wasn't discussed in this, but in the head of your HTML, there's a place where you can put all the keywords, your meta description, your meta keywords and whatnot. You need to do, if you're really concerned about the SEO, and you should be, you need to do analysis on what your specific topic is talking about. Google offers some programs, I believe, that you can actually, you know, use to like see the analytics on certain keywords. That's an entire class in and of itself. But yeah, buy domains is my, like, you know, get the one you like, make sure it's readable, like it's easy to type out, because you don't want people struggling to actually type out domain. And buy things like common misspellings of a site, for example, is, or also you talk about subdomains and the main, but like .com, .org, .net, you know, the you should buy multiple of those as well if possible. I mean, it's not expensive. It's well, Shannon, I imagine I saw that you probably are paying like $1,000 a month for all the domains you have.
More like $1,000 a year.
Let's go back to roots. You have to think about your business objectives, right? And as soon as you know your business objectives and your value proposition, we have entire class about this specifically, because this is the art. It seems to be an art, but it is not as soon as you know your business objectives. So you can make any domain name working for you. And I just put into the chat the lean domain search. It's very much the art of combining your business objectives, what you want, what's the value you want to bring to people versus what's the shortest way to spell it, how to explain it. You can do storytelling in many, many, many ways, right? So think about it as storytelling. You can tell the same tale, the same story with using different words. The question about KPIs, what words do you want to be known by? And as soon as you choose,
Key performance indicator.
yeah, KPIs are key performance indicators. As soon as you do your first initial search and you find what's the need versus what you have to offer, then you choose what the domain name would be. So it's kind of triangle, not triangle, but three leaves here. And then you go creative about this. You can create the entire phrase. First, initially, people were hunting the shortest domain ever because short type, fast type. But then they learned about storytelling, and now they are putting the entire phrases into this. That's how the lean domain search became live, because people learned the art of like storytelling through the domain name, which is easy to search, easy to Google. So domain name system, DNS, actually is a huge metrics for search engine optimization. It's like #1 metrics to be successful in your SEO, period.
Julia, that's amazing advice. Honestly, like no one actually is going to type in your domain. They're going to go to Google and
Exactly.
they're going to look at what comes up. You want your site to be coming up first, basically.
Yep. And you know what? The moment of glory, I have to brag. I am the one who created the one of DNS system parts. So I'm an international influencer here, so I have unlimited source of knowledge or access to this expertise. But the trend is definitely DNS stands here to serve your KPIs, and that's the class we teach. Your business objectives versus technology you're using. Information, it's called information architecture. What shall you use? What CDN? What the hosting? What's the domain name? And how do you do this? Are you using just simple HTML, CSS, JavaScript? Are you using specific content management system? Are you using specific CDN to deliver it? It's all questions to answer based on your metrics, KPIs, again and again. So that's why before we do anything, we interview what's your objectives. Make sense?
Yeah, actually,
Yes.
I mean, another freaking class right there. I mean, like, if you don't have the KPIs, how do you even like, how do you start with that? It's such a
So many
important
people
question.
start, waste money, waste time, but it's a good lesson actually for them to learn. When you pay your real cash for that, you learn faster.
Yes, so Yulia was referring to a class which is the first in our web development boot camp, and you don't have to take the whole boot camp if you're just interested in the one course. I just wanted to clarify she had made reference to a course, so just so everybody knows, there's a course that OpenHub offers that's a 4-week exploration into developing the content for your key performance indicators for your business, so that you're actually successfully connecting with your right fit user, which is the foundation to conversions, like Louise was talking about.
Yeah, may I use the moment just to share to explain? So this is the domain name. Oh, sorry. Oh God. Okay.
And then after this, we'll do a website and
Yep.
landing
So
page.
look at this. First of all, this is the website OpenHub built. Right? We have a lot to offer. I know it's sometimes too much, but the easy navigation is. Am I sharing the right screen?
Are you? Yeah, we can see the OpenHub website.
Okay. So you choose bootcamps, you choose fast track web development bootcamp, and the way we built it starting with business objectives and planning. Then we do some technology, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we go loop back to one of business objectives called SEO and website optimization. But it's not limited. Business objectives can just, the list is going on and on. We shall discuss that. But it's a different class. I don't
Also, the price that you saw on the screen is for the whole boot camp, not for that one class, just so everybody knows.
Yeah, we're trying to make it modular. Yep.
So, what do people want to discuss about landing pages and websites?
So yeah, long-time developer, terrible marketer. Landing pages versus a website page. Like, when should I actually create a landing page? Like, what's the actual point of a landing page versus a website page?
Okay. I'm sure Yulia will chime in, but I'm going to start. So a landing page is when you want one specific purpose. You want to have a conversation with someone about one thing, which is, don't you want this free gift that I offered you? You clicked on this link. Now we're just going to talk about the free gift. There's no menu at the top. You're not going to get distracted. I don't want to distract you, right? And so that's basically what a landing page is for. Sometimes it's as simple as an email form like what I put together, and other times it's a sales page, or it has sales copy, video at the top, and whatever. It can be longer. But that's basically what it's for. And then a website is for the information of a user journey, informational about you. Like if people are like, hey, I want to know about this person and know what all their services are and all that stuff.
I did the wrong thing right now. But this is something I want to share.
Oh, there's another. Do you want the other one?
What other one?
It's coming.
I love the clicky type boards, by the way. Whoever has clicky type boards, I applaud you. You are a true developer, and I applaud you.
Clicky sound of the keyboard.
Clicky means buzzwords, searchable words, right? You mean this one?
No, I actually mean physically, like when you're typing
Yeah,
on your keyboard, it clicks. Like that's an
Ah.
actual person who develops, in my opinion.
Okay.
That'd be me.
Landing page wise, there's a lot of, I posted a link to a plugin that's available for WordPress.
Yep.
And it's all right, but it's more of just a template. There are some utilities coming out now, and they're still relatively new, so I haven't had a chance to really look into them. But they actually go into the science of creating a well-marketed landing page. The one that I'm particularly interested in is the I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the rank math plugin. It's like Yoast. I think everyone's heard of Yoast, but it's a similar product to Yoast. But one of their little subcategories that they just came out with this fall was a utility that lets you build a really highly SEO optimized landing page. So I'm kind of
WordPress
interested.
specific, right? WordPress specific.
Oh yeah. This is WordPress specific. I'm sorry. I always have a leaning towards doing everything in WordPress.
Yeah,
we're trying to be agnostic, content management system agnostic.
Robert, I put a word in the chat for you. Optimized Press is, I believe it's a theme for WordPress that comes with a very robust landing page builder. So you might enjoy checking that out.
Yeah, I might bring that up and fire that up in say like Local by Flywheel and build a few landing pages and then port them over to my live site.
Julia's got something to show, I think.
I'm just trying to say there are different people, driven by different objectives. I've seen so many developers who are just driven by, oh, this is such a cool tool, let's use it, period. They don't think about business objectives. They don't think about the deliverables or how user will perceive those. They think about, this is so cool. I like it. Let me try it. Let me play with this. And I like this mindset because that allows you experiment. But please don't forget about your customers if you are building websites for someone else. Don't forget about your users. It's really crucial. Before you enter into any website development, into any domain, subdomain, or landing pages, this is something to think through really carefully and to do a lot of surveys and to do a lot of interview and just to find what they are really taking care of, what the keyword they are using into the search, and if they will be landing with your website, if it's your desired customer, if it's your customer avatar. So what we did in the chat right now, we put a couple landing pages there. And I think those represent really important concept. First, I think James at openhubproject.com, that's representing what the student did as an experiment, right? So that subdomain we allocated for student to experiment, and all our students received the subdomain names to play as a sandground, a sandbox. as soon as we like something or dislike something, or like if we want to move something into the real landing page, which we want to be searchable by customers. So we're trying to get the meaningful keywords for that, which are contextual. For example, the second one is the bootcamps at openhubproject.com. And saying that we are not seeking to have these searchable, but we're seeking to use those for specific scenario, kind of user story plot. Make sense? Very specific user behavior. So there is a lot of psychology built into this.
And it would typically be used in combination with a promotion rather than search engine optimization, right? So it's with the Facebook ad or whatever sort of promotion. Doesn't have to be a paid promotion, could be a free organic promotion technique.
That's why we're talking about business objectives. Business objectives can vary. Make sense?
Yep.
Landing page can be used, for example, for the specific test. You can test landing page 1 versus landing page 2. And you just throw out those two and see what people will be more like clicking or enjoying. One use case. Second use case, you want to promote it as a special proposal, special offer, period. You don't want these to be seen by everyone or searchable. This is a special URL, okay, specific secret URL you want to share with like your clients on specific scenario. And that's where a HubSpot can come to play, because there are a long. There's another way how to address DNS, your domain name system. So first thing to go with subdomain, that's where you own your space usually, or you point it to your space, or you can choose the tail, and that's where your Facebook pixel can go, or your specific email campaign, marketing campaigns can go, tracking GTM, Google Tag Managers. Dennis, do you want to address this a little bit?
Well, no, I think you've done a pretty good job in general. I do want to add one thing that I think was missed, and it is that S at the end of HTTP.
Oh, yeah, it's nice, good point.
Yeah, I just know, I just thought about that. Like, if you have tried to get a secure domain, because you will not be, I mean, Google's going to say no to you if you don't actually get the SSL. So what I'm talking about is at the very beginning, you see HTTP, you want that S at the end of it. That means your site is secure. That means you're less likely to be, hacked, basically.
How do you add the S?
SSL certificate.
There is Open SSL. Is it Open SSL? I think that's
yes.
Yeah, you can do that for free there. There are paid services as well if you don't want to go through that process. Plugging HubSpot, we do it for free. If you have a domain at HubSpot, you will get that just added on. But regardless, whatever site you have, add it immediately. The other thing I wanted to say was with WordPress plugins.
Before we go to the next topic, the other thing is when you get an SSL certificate, you also have to make sure, and HubSpot might do it for you, but if you're in a different situation, it might not be done for you. You have to make sure that there's a redirect from HTTP to HTTPS, because if someone types in HTTP your website, or even your website without, like I am always typing in, I don't know, I might be unusual, but I actually type in the URL, but I don't put in the protocol. And then what happens if people don't have proper redirects set up in their htaccess file or by other means to send from HTTP to HTTPS, then the browser will actually access it via HTTP and say, it's not secure. So that's the second part, James. If you're going to install, get yourself set up with HTTPS, number one, get your security certificate, and then number two, make sure that you're redirecting from HTTP to HTTPS. And batch that.
Yeah, Shannon, it's great. I mean, honestly, I'm a little upset with providers these days that this should just be a standard thing at this point, in my opinion. It doesn't cost them anything. The other thing I was going to add was with WordPress plugins, if it's free, make sure you're doing your research. Robert or Bob, actually, I think you go by. You mentioned local. I totally advocate like installing these things locally and looking at them first and seeing like what they're injecting into your code, because if it's free, oftentimes they are injecting something bad that you'd want to make sure that, or they're tracking you in some capacity and taking advantage of it. So always do that.
Yeah, I did a project for a nonprofit that needed an event calendar. And so I spun up like 5 local WordPress sites and inserted a separate plugin into each of these 5 WordPress sites and tested them out and see how they work, and decided which one was going to be best for the customer, just by, sure, it took me, an afternoon to do it. You got to spin up 5 sites and you got to download all these plugins and get used to them. But, it really helps the customer out in the end when they know that, hey, someone has looked at 5 different products and tried to figure out which one is best for them.
Yeah, totally. Another question I have for Shanna and Yulia is, let's say you're doing a good job. People are coming to your site, people are filling out forms. What do you do with the data after that? Like, how do you segment? How do you actually deal with that data?
I think it's entire next class. It's such a huge topic, Dennis. I would love to have a class on that. It's really big thing. And I would benefit from other people experience on that. I'm still trying to find the destination for my data or data analytics fund and storing all this data. I'm not satisfied with neither one platforms out there.
Cough, HubSpot, but yeah, whatever.
I can answer from my own experience. I've shopped around a tiny little bit. So I tried Keep, and that opened my eyes to all kinds of customizability on beyond. We have a new person. On beyond what I could do with Mailchimp. Now, are you not familiar, or you're curious from the perspective of what competition there is for HubSpot?
Oh God, no! I don't care about competition whatsoever. My point of being here is not to advocate for my employer. I mean, that's, yes, good. We do a good job of it, but I'm very curious of, like, I've been there as the freelancer, or the person trying to actually deal with, wow, 100 people actually fill out this form. Now what? Like, it's a legitimate question. I think that people need to think about.
The best way. You did it. You nailed it, Dennis. Starting as a freelancer, you know the struggle. And now you're on other side of the market. I'm glad you're experiencing this from both perspectives. That's definitely the challenge, and definitely there is a room for improvement here, period. Being data-driven, I would loop it back to your business objectives. What's your initial starting metrics of success? How do you define it? What do you want to get out of this? Oh, I'm so excited. So many people are coming here. Okay, all those are spam, junk. Do I want them? They're not buying. Okay.
Actually, that's a really good point, because in my own journey as an entrepreneur, I've had business coaches too, right? So my business coaches are like, oh, post, get organic traffic. So you post on Facebook, it's a 1-2, whatever they call it, DM me if you're interested. Okay, now we're having a conversation. But I haven't actually, because the coaches, I'm not trying to blame my coaches, but in the earlier part of my marketing learning, I didn't know what came next. Now I understand that I have to build out my whole funnel. Now I know what the word funnel even means. It means that when I put up the form, I already know what I want, what the next step is that I want to do with these people. And then I can use, depending on, for every little thing that I have, I can, in other words, every little form that I have, I can tag people when they fill out that form, so that then in my email service provider, I know, oh, these people took this action. And then I can set up automations. And I heard of a famous name, but I don't remember the name. Could have been like Grant Cardone or somebody like that, who maybe no one ever's heard of him here. But he or someone like him actually had a whole year of email automations, so that people would enter his funnel and then he wouldn't have to do anything for an entire year. Just depending on their behavior, they would get this email or this offer or that offer. So, but it takes time to build that out.
That person's brilliant, by the way. That's like amazing to be able to automate that much.
Yeah, I'm gonna get there one email at a time.
Wait, what's the person's name? Who did that?
I don't know if I'm matching the right name.
Okay.
So I can't tell you, but if you wanted to look up Grant Cardone, he'd be happy to market to you.
Wait,
There are
who's Grant
plenty.
Cardone?
There are plenty of brilliant marketers out there, and this is off top for today's class. First of all, let me wrap the class because we are actually scheduled for being here 6 to 7:15. I will keep the Zoom open and I will welcome newcomers, and I will be happy to allow you to network and ask more questions, but I just need to stop recording and wrap the official part of this class, and you can stick here. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Saying that,
Yes,
let's
looks like-
appreciate Shana.
Looks like I joined just the nick of time then. Right when you guys were ending.
We have it recorded.
It's fine. Hello, my name is Brian Hankins. I'm a freelance web developer. I'm based in the middle part of the United States in Indiana. It's nice to meet
Ooh.
you all.
Cool. How did you find us?
I was just Googling hackathons or just meetups in general. Yeah, this morning the other day, so and I found you guys on here, so
Cool. So did the time zone difference mess you up?
not really. I had a big busy day today, so
Okay.
I had some meetings with some clients. I'm thinking of getting off the freelance train. When I heard you guys were talking about freelance, I'm just thinking of getting off myself. Been
Yep,
noticing it's
yep,
a steady
yep.
decline in customers, and I don't want to be my own lawyer and my own HR. I just want to be a developer.
Okay.